So I'm very sympathetic to you having to represent doctors and so forth. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what I'm doing and try and put it in the perspective of what we've been talking about today. I started, and I'm now the executive founder of something called Way to Wellville. It's a 10-year project. It started out as a 5-year project. It's a 10-year project to work in 5 small U.S. communities, not honestly because I think these communities inherently matter so much, but more as a demonstration of what actually can work. We do not call it an experiment or a pilot. We call it a rollout. Our goal is to make this happen and then for other people to be inspired by what we're doing and to say, we can do that too. If these jokers in Muskegon, which is this depressed, devastated little county on the other side of Michigan from Detroit, if they can do it, so can we. So we were invited in, 42 communities applied. It's not a nice white lady came from New York to tell you how to use wearables or to fix your health system. It's the community leaders themselves wanted to, quote, create health, not simply cure disease. The medical systems are involved, but they're not necessarily the leaders. It's the business community, it's local nonprofits. In Oregon, it's the Medicaid administration outfit, but it's different institutions. And the word I would say that's most important that I've heard here this morning is accountability. One of the big problems is initiatives like these are mostly charitable, not-for-profit, and people say, we've donated this much, we're running a program, we've given out so many devices, or we've run so many classes, but they don't really count the impact. And because it's a charitable endeavor and these are nice people, they get the money to keep doing it with no impact. So the second word you mentioned is metrics. And that certainly is where a lot of the data comes in. Maybe it's A1C, but it's also metrics around how many kids graduate from college or from high school. What is the level of absenteeism among employers? Then there are the medical metrics like quality-adjusted life years and transitions to diabetes and heart attacks and so forth and so on. But I'll tell you a really sad story. In one of the communities, 30% of the kids in school are obese. And they have this goal, it's to reduce obesity by 3%. So I asked IC, do you mean 3% or 3 percentage points? And they said, what's the difference? If you can't measure, you can't be accountable. So when I hear about individual behavior, I think not only of the engagement of individual users/patients, but also the engagement of the institutions in changing their behavior patterns, in deciding to become accountable, especially in these small communities. The notion of setting a goal, making yourself accountable, having a date, having a person responsible, it's really hard to do. In many of these communities, it's the healthcare system that is one of the few places that actually is fairly well run. So the healthcare system is absolutely a part of this. And in the United States, Obamacare, people focus a lot on who's paying, but the genius of Obamacare is actually what they're paying for. It's called the Accountable Care Act. And each community, because it's required by the government, one way or another, is starting to measure these community health measures and pay a little attention to them. But we're not, so it sounds so easy. I just told you we've got the solution, be accountable. But somehow it's not happening. And so this is the challenge in each community. How do you get from that understanding to the reality of it? And I would argue that digital health is part of it, but most of what we are advising the communities to do is a combination of digital health, whether it's wearables or tracking data or a curriculum that may be delivered through telehealth, that may be delivered on an iPad, it may be delivered as text messages. combining that with local people, not experts from outside, but local people who can be trained much more cheaply than doctors. So it's not simply sending the doctors into the streets. They're pretty valuable back in the clinic. But training health coaches, training, the words are various, doulas. My aunt was what the NHS called an almoner. She took care of unmarried moms, this nice Catholic lady in the 40s and 50s, took care of these unmarried moms. And when she died 5 years ago, many of them and their children showed up because she made a difference in their lives in a way that some people can, and for other people, the digital is enough. This is where we get to the individual precision medicine part. Doing psychological tests, asking people to tell you themselves, Steve, what motivates you? I mean, evidently not enough, but is it to be healthy? Is it to compete with other buff guys? Is it to have your children admire you? Is it to see your grandchild graduate? For each person, there's going to be a different set of factors, a different set of behaviors. Understanding the precision psychology of the person is probably more important than understanding their medical, at least for the behavior change part. It doesn't matter who you are or what your genetics are, except for very rare cases. You gotta eat more vegetables and fewer the pastries that they served at coffee time. Your surroundings really influence you. But if you can figure out what it is that will also influence your behavior in real time, then that can be the most important. So we're looking at taking all these digital tools and services, combining them with locally trained people. And as you said, it's not me and my coach. It's probably me and 20 other pre-diabetic women getting together for a class. And in our communities, you also need to provide childcare while these women attend the class. Maybe some of those kids can be going for dental visits. There's a lot of personal responsibility we've been talking about, but ultimately, it's both the community that creates the conditions that either produce health or erode it. And in our communities, most of the conditions erode health. It's all very well to tell someone to eat more vegetables, but if the grocery store doesn't have them or they can't get to the grocery store because their husband's in jail, their husband's on drugs. So in our communities, we focus on the women who may have given up hope, but they still care about their children. And that's probably the biggest motivator. I could talk on a lot, but when your kid is getting better food and training, learning how to cook at school and selecting better menus, the kid goes home and talks to the parents. When the wife is in an obesity prevention program, the husband notices. It's the social community around you. And if we spend more money training people to deliver health locally, we're going to end up spending less money on healthcare that's not that effective at the end. So I want to end not so much with a story, but with a metaphor. It's not the stone soup, this is a new one. When we started, so I come from the business community. I'm a tech investor. I ran a conference that Chris attended with Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Larry Page and all these guys. So I want things to be business-like. Accountability, metrics, results. And I talked about producing health. One of the people in our team of 5 that is doing this work, he's kind of like, a secret socialist, radical kind of guy. Kept saying that's too industrial. We had nice arguments, and we figured out what we should say. It's cultivating health. You need accountability, and farmers have a lot of accountability, but in the end, you put stuff in the soil, you put nutrients on it, you water it, you take out the weeds, but in the end, the plants need to grow by themselves. And so what we're doing in our communities is cultivating health. Thank you.